Okay, let's just calm down, everybody. So Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian on a lovely Wednesday evening across most of the country. So, I mean, is there a show we don't have Trump nonsense in these days?
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's par for the course now, and you can expect it. There's all sorts of news, but I gotta be honest with you, my absolute favorite story of the day is in hour 2, where we will discuss people who refuse to vaccinate their dogs over fears of autism.
The dog is going to be autistic, and we would know how. All right, we'll save that conversation later.
So good, you don't wanna miss it.
Okay, and one of my favorite stories is a little bit later in this hour. Donald Trump's new, very specific lies. Like it is about a certain genre, okay? He is amazing. All right, and if you guys are saying, well, like sometimes we get the criticism from time to time that we've covered too much Trump. I don't know if you know this, he's the president of the United States. Okay, so with that depressing thought, we move forward. What's up first, Anna?
All right. Donald Trump and 2 Republican senators have unveiled their version of limiting immigration in the United States. And this goes further than just building a wall in the southern border. What they're now planning on doing is making it extremely difficult to obtain a green card. So they are limiting and capping legal immigration, sort of. So I'll give you the catch to this story in just a second, but first let me outline what they're doing exactly. Trump announced the Reforming American Immigration for Strong Employment Act on August 2nd, which aims to cut immigration by half from the current level of more than 1 million green cards granted per year. The legislation would mark a major shift in US immigration laws, which over the past half century have permitted a growing number of immigrants to come to the country to work or join relatives already living here legally. So one caveat to this policy would be the fact that minor children and spouses would still be eligible to apply for these green cards. So if it is a minor child living in a different country who wants to reunite with a parent who's living in the country legally, they would be able to do so by applying for that green card and hopefully getting approved for it. Now, let's hear from Trump. He was joined by Tom Cotton and David Perdue, the 2 GOP senators who worked on this legislation. Let's take a look.
This competitive application process will favor applicants who can speak English, financially support themselves and their families, and demonstrate skills that will contribute to our economy. The RAISE Act prevents new migrants and new immigrants from collecting welfare and protects US workers from being displaced.
So I want to weigh in on why this is a huge hypocrisy, or shows the hypocrisy of the conservatives in a second. And also the 2 things that are driving the 2 decisions you're going to tell us about. This is the first, and then there's a second that is kind of ironic on the same day.
Right. Well, it actually wasn't decided on the same day. You're talking about the increase in the cap. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating that he is, using all this tough talk, and the GOP is saying, no, this is a great idea because we have American workers who need jobs, and unfortunately those positions are being filled by foreigners, and we just can't have it. We need to look out for Americans, America first. However, very recently, Donald Trump decided to lift the cap on foreign workers coming into the United States to work in the fishing industry, in some other temporary jobs, seasonal jobs. So I'll give you the numbers on that. So the Department of Homeland Security actually raised the cap on what's known as H-2B visas for foreign guest workers. It was originally 66,000 a year, and they increased the number to 81,000. A couple days after the Trump administration did that, guess what Trump did specifically? Just 3 days later, Trump's properties told the Department of Labor that they wanted approval to hire 76 guest workers using those visas. But what about the American workers? I mean, they're very concerned about the American workers. And here's the thing, like if they were genuinely concerned about American workers and they provided data and statistics indicating that this policy would help Americans get jobs, this policy is not done for xenophobic reasons, then I'm willing to have a conversation. I think that that is a legitimate concern. But when the numbers don't add up and when they say things like, oh, they need to be able to speak English and they have to have good education skills. I mean, it's pretty clear what they're trying to do. They're trying to paint these individuals as, illiterate individuals who want to come here and mooch off the system, when that is the furthest thing from the truth. And the Trump administration likes to use foreign labor as well, so yeah, we know what the reality is.
Okay, so first of all, I would love to see if Trump could pass those English tests that he's referring to for the immigrants. But to the heart of the issue, remember all the times the conservatives said, no, this is not about legal immigration. We're just, I mean, we gotta be a country of laws. We gotta have a border. If we don't have a border, we don't have a nation. So this is all about making sure that there is not undocumented immigrants, or what they would call illegal immigrants or illegal aliens. But no, we're not racist. It has nothing to do with Latinos. It has nothing to do with any of that stuff. You liberals are making that up. No, we love legal immigration as long as you are following the laws. Turns out, just kidding, we don't really like legal immigrants either. So we're gonna take the number of legal immigrants and cut them by half. Now, there's a couple of reasons we're gonna do that. We claim it's for the American worker, but I mean, this thing that Anna just told you about how Trump, when it comes to his own properties, is bringing in foreign workers. That's it, I'm not having a conversation about American workers and whether Trump cares about them anymore. I'm having a conversation about how we can actually help American workers,
right,
but not what Trump's intent is. Trump's intent is politics, and when it comes to actual jobs, he's like, no, I'm not gonna hire Americans, they cost more. No way, hey, that's for you, that's not for me. So there's two real motivations. One is pander to your base, and hence the pander bear. And so healthcare was a disaster. I've accomplished nothing, but don't worry, foaming at the mouth conservatives, I still hate brown people, and we're just kidding about it being illegal. We don't care about that at all. We just care that they're from different countries, they're foreigners. And the second part of it is that politics. So if these people eventually become citizens, well, minorities are more likely to vote Democratic. Immigrants are more likely to vote Democratic. So here's a genius idea for the Republicans. Let's cut off immigration. Right. Who cares that it damages the economy, it damages the American idea, goes against the principles of the Statue of Liberty. Don't care. I care about winning elections and scoring points with my base.
Right, exactly. And I love the point that you made about him pandering to his base, because look, even if you are a little more open to the Trump administration, you have to admit that there is a pattern, and this pattern has been so obvious, especially in the last 2 weeks. Okay, he fails when it comes to repealing the Affordable Care Act. He immediately goes off and tweets in the middle of the morning, early in the morning, about how transgender individuals are now banned from the military, without advising anyone, letting anyone know that he's gonna do it. It was pandering to his base. And then fast forward to this week, here's what he does when really behind the scenes, he just applies for more foreign workers to come and work on his properties. Why aren't you employing American workers? Again, I wanna be clear. I think that we need to have an immigration policy that makes sense, that not only benefits people coming into the country legally, but also benefits Americans living here and doesn't hurt them. But this discussion is clouded in so much xenophobia that it's difficult to take anything that he says seriously.
So on the issue of legal immigration, there are conclusive studies that show that they overall add to the economy, and not only, there's all talk about taking jobs, but a lot of them wind up becoming entrepreneurs that create more jobs here in America. So, and then the other part of it is that also studies showing that on average, legal immigrants commit less crimes than the average American.
Right.
So all those excuses are washed away. This is just about, we don't want foreigners in the country, and it's basically as simple as that. But on the issue of the actual jobs, I'm with you, Anna. I'm very curious about that. I wish I had access to all the information that the president has, which I'm sure he has not utilized at all.
Yeah.
But in terms of, so they brought in all these workers partly to work on Trump's properties, yep. Okay? So on their issue of their hypocrisy on the workers' visas. But so there's a seafood processing plants in Virginia, and they're worried that it might be already too late. They applied to get more workers because they need them because they couldn't pick the crabs, shuck the oysters, pack the bait. There's refrigerating the seafood, there's hauling, et cetera. There's all this stuff. And so Americans can't do that. I mean, of course they can do that. So, but it's a tough job, and I guess, but that's a normal blue collar job. I'm amazed that we can't find Americans in Virginia to do that job. So, which of course means, no, we just can't find Americans at the price that they want to pay, the wages they want to pay.
So that, yeah, and that is an interesting perspective, and I looked into that as well because, look, if you're looking for cheap foreign labor, well then yeah, of course you're not gonna wanna hire Americans and pay them a fair living wage. But to counter that, there was a farmer, a grape farmer in Northern California, Napa Valley to be specific. And so he wanted to do right by Americans, and he wanted to increase the wages and provide benefits so he could attract American workers and rely on them. And so he increased the wage to $16 an hour, which is pretty good, and offered benefits including a 401k and health insurance. And guess what? He still couldn't find Americans who were willing to do the job. And I'm not making this up. The Los Angeles Times wrote about this. The New York Times wrote about this. It was part of something I found during my research for my debate.
So I know, and there's the cases down in the South, actually, ironically, in the states of, I believe, the two people who were introducing this bill with Trump, Purdue, definitely, in Georgia, they tried it once, and Tom Cotton's from Arkansas. And they got tough on illegal immigrants. In that case, it was undocumented and not legal. They kicked them out, and then the factories almost closed down and went to bankruptcy because they couldn't find anybody to work at those jobs. But nonetheless, I find that I literally don't believe it, and I'll tell you why. Those things definitely happen. It just means you had to increase the wages even more. And so, but it is a very interesting question is that what wage will an American be willing to do these kind of blue collar jobs? And I don't mean just regular blue collar, they are hard, they're super hard. You go pick grapes or tomatoes in the middle of-
backbreaking labor.
Yeah, in the middle of heat waves, et cetera. And so, but there's gotta be a price, and does that mean that if at that price we wouldn't buy the wine, we wouldn't buy the crabs that they're doing? And that's never really been tested.
And look, to be honest with you guys, yes, it has to do with the amount of money a worker is getting paid, but there are other factors that don't get talked about enough or ever. For instance, migrant workers are much more mobile. They're willing to move from one place to another to take these jobs. When in reality, American citizens, they buy homes. They're usually not stuck in one place, but they want to stay in one place. That's where their family is. That's where their lives are. And so that's one of the other reasons why some American workers don't take these jobs, because it means that they're going to have to move from one place to another.
So finally, look, I just want to separate out the issues a little bit, because I'm very curious about at what price Americans actually take these jobs. And I think we should test that, and if it means higher prices for crab and wine, okay, right? I don't want to diminish that too much, because some people forget the wine and the crab, but for real produce and things that you need for your daily diet, that is really important for low-income people to have affordable food to eat. But I think as a society, we need to know how much the food actually costs. Either it costs a price that is higher and we can pay it, or let's just be done with this farce and go, no, it turns out we need foreign workers, because otherwise nobody buys these products because they're too expensive. And the real cost is this, but in order for it to be that low, we need foreign workers. Let's figure that out. It tries, all they do is demagogue in politics. On all sides, but obviously most especially these guys who are all on the warpath against immigrants. And finally, that goes to my second point, which is that this immigration issue about the green cards is in a lot of ways removed from that wage issue. So on a macro level, of course, immigration could affect wages, but in reality, the people that you're bringing in, it seems like a big number, a million people a year, but according to the last census, we have at least 330 million people in the country. By now, it'll probably be way higher than that. So it's a tiny fraction of the people in America. And a lot of those immigrants, like I said, create jobs. So in reality, are we a country of immigrants? And so if we are, we should do those immigration positions no matter what, especially legal immigration. And then on the wages issue, let's figure that out. And if we think, okay, we don't want more low-wage workers coming in on visas,
right,
that's a separate issue that we should sort out. And none of the politicians so far have actually given a decent answer to that.
Yeah, it turns out immigration is kind of complicated.
Nobody knew that. Nobody knew that immigration was complicated.
All right, let's move on to another angle to this immigration story. White House senior advisor Stephen Miller had a press conference where he spoke to reporters about Donald Trump's and GOP senators' attempt at immigration reform, their immigration legislation. And he did get quite a bit of pushback and did get a little snippy with the reporters. So we wanted to share some of those exchanges with you. Let's start off with video number 5, where he talks about a little bit of hypocrisy within the Trump administration. Take a look.
Will the Trump organization stop bringing in foreign workers on visa programs to set an example for other businesses in the interim before this bill becomes law?
Well, as you know, the only way to have immigration policy work is it has to be national, it has to be uniform. You can't have different rules and different procedures for different companies. This bill, of course, doesn't deal with guest workers and temporary non-immigrant visas, which is, I think, what you're asking about. And that's a separate thing. But the president was clear, if you go back and look at his debate on this during the primary, where he said, as a businessman, my responsibility is to operate my business according to the laws of the United States as they exist. He said, as president, my responsibility is to pass laws that make sure we have an immigration system that prioritizes American workers.
So the question that he was asked, just to give you guys a little more context, was in regard to the fact that the Trump administration raised the cap on the number of foreign temporary workers who can come into the country. 3 days after that happened, Trump Properties applied for 76 guest workers to work on their properties. So it seems like there's a little bit of hypocrisy there when Trump claims that he wants to open up jobs for American workers.
Okay, so all you guys in the red hats, next time you get pissed about somebody hiring foreign workers, well, you know who to look to. It's Donald Trump. So no, there's no excuses. You can go cry about it all you want, but patient zero is Donald Trump, the president who's constantly lying about putting America first. When it comes to his own properties, when it comes to the money he's making, he's like, I don't care about American workers. I was just messing with you because I think you're stupid. And I'm just gonna rub it in your face, even though I said it on the campaign trail. Now I'm president. It would have been one thing, well, I didn't win, so what, who cares? Let's go back to doing the things that we do. I never meant it in the first place. Now you're president, you do all these branding and marketing around made in America, hire American. You do whole weeks around, you get into fire trucks and act like a child, okay? And at the end of the day, no, still, as president, hiring low-wage foreign workers. So if you think that's a giant problem, then you hate Donald Trump. Just pick a side, because if you say it's no problem at all, hey, businesses got to do what they got to do, then you don't think it's a problem. If you think it's a problem, then you think Donald Trump is a flaming asshole for not hiring Americans. And let me give you a sense of how egregious and greedy he is. 76 workers, you can't find 76 Americans, and how much more is that gonna cost you? $2 an hour, $4 an hour? Remember at Mar-a-Lago, one of these estates, he increased subscription that you have to pay to be a member from $100,000 a year to $200,000. That can't afford $2 or $4 more per worker to make them American? No, he just doesn't care about you at all. And he certainly doesn't care about principles.
So I just want to jump in from, look, we are obviously progressives. And so for those of you who are like, you guys just hate Trump and you're just criticizing him. No, he's getting criticism on this issue from the right as well. In fact, Numbers USA, which does not like immigration, released a statement in regard to what Trump did in increasing the number of foreign workers coming into the country. Let's go to graphic 11. This is a quote or a statement from them. They said, this is yet another example of the administration and Congress failing to keep the Trump campaign promise of putting American workers first. That's from Roy Beck from Numbers USA. He's the president of Numbers USA.
Yeah, that group is totally against immigration. So they love the press release today about limiting legal immigrants. All that talk about, we don't want undocumented. No, they just don't want any immigrants. And even they acknowledge, yeah, the president is doing absolutely the wrong thing, or according to their ideology, by getting low-wage workers that work in his properties. As always with the elite, different rules for you, different rules for them.
Exactly. Now let's go to other portions of Miller's press conference. In the next video, you will see him responding to Jim Acosta. This is where things get super snippy, and it's over the Statue of Liberty. Let's go to video 7.
What you're proposing, or what the president is proposing here, does not sound like it's in keeping with American tradition when it comes to immigration. The Statue of Liberty says, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. Doesn't say anything about speaking English or being able to be a computer programmer. Aren't you trying to change what it means to be an immigrant coming into this country if you're telling them you have to speak English? Can't people learn how to speak English when they get here?
Well, first of all, right now, it's a requirement that to be naturalized, you have to speak English. So the notion that speaking English wouldn't be a part of our immigration systems would be actually very ahistorical. Secondly, I don't want to get off into a whole thing about history here, but the Statue of Liberty is a symbol of liberty enlightening the world. It's a symbol of American liberty lighting the world. The poem that you're referring to that was added later is not actually part of the original Statue of Liberty, but more fundamentally, the history, but more fundamentally,
you're saying
the
that
history
does not represent.
I'm saying that
what the
the
notion.
I'm saying the notion that I'm saying the notion.
I'm sorry.
No,
that sounds like
Jim, let me ask you a question.
That sounds like some national park revisionism.
No,
the Statue of Liberty has always been a beacon of hope to the world for people to send their people to this country, and they're not always going to speak English, Stephen. They're not always going to be highly skilled. They're not always going to be.
Jim, I appreciate your speech. Jim, I appreciate your speech.
So but Jim Acosta is exactly right about revisionism there, right? So all of a sudden the Statue of Liberty is not a beacon to the world. What? Of course it is, that's the whole point. That light is kind of pointing in the other direction. It's for America, it's okay, but no, we put it out in front of New York to welcome immigrants in. Trying to do historical revisionism on that is amazing. And the poem that you've all heard about, give me your poor, you're tired, that Jim Acosta quoted in part, you should read the whole poem. It's amazing and it's wonderful, and it's what the core of this country is. Well, it's just a poem. I mean, really? We're talking about poems now? No, no. It said, give me your rich, your computer programmers, and other people connected to rich donors. And everyone else that might vote Democratic, we vote no. I mean, if we apply that standard to the Italians that were coming in, the Irish that were coming in, the Jews that were coming in, the Polish, all those guys, right? And by the way, if you're in those categories, and it doesn't have to be any of those racial or ethnic categories, but people who came in 2 generations ago, come on, man, support your fellow Americans. You just went through it. So stand up and say, hey, when it's someone else, I want them to have the same chance that I had, my family had, my grandparents had. So if you're in that category, let's fight together, man, because they're trying to destroy the idea of America there. It isn't just for the rich, it's for all of us.
Yeah, and since we're talking about this country only being open to the rich under the Trump administration, I mean, they do practice what they preach in that regard. I mean, they're not upset at Kushner Properties going to China and asking for $500,000 in investments in US properties just so they can get that golden visa. They have no problem with that, right? And think about how that actually does harm Americans, because as I've said time and time again, it artificially inflates the housing market to the point where people earning a decent living here in the US can't even afford to buy homes or apartments or condos. That's what's happening. And so if you want to talk about real issues, those are the real issues that should be discussed. But of course, we have wealthy people in power right now that just take advantage of their position of power to make more money. They use it to their advantage. One final video from this press conference, because Jim Acosta was just really heated, and I love it. So in this next one, Miller attempts to flip things around on Acosta. You decide for yourselves whether it worked.
This whole notion of, well, they could learn, they have to learn English before they get to the United States. Are we just going to bring in people from Great Britain and Australia?
Jim, actually, I have to honestly say, I am shocked at your statement that you think that only people from Great Britain and Australia would know English. It reveals your cosmopolitan bias to a shocking degree that in your mind, no, this is an amazing moment. This is an amazing moment that you think only people from Great Britain or Australia would speak English is so insulting to millions of hardworking immigrants who do speak English from all over the world. Jim, have you honestly never met an immigrant from another country who speaks English outside of Great Britain and Australia? Is that your personal experience?
Of course, there are people who come.
But that's not what you said, and it shows your cosmopolitan bias. And I just want to say,
it sounds like you're trying to engineer the racial and ethnic flow of people into this country.
Jim, that is one of the most outrageous, insulting, ignorant, and foolish things you've ever said. And for you, that's still a really the notion that you think that this is a racist bill is so wrong and so insulting.
Wow.
How could you possibly think that? Look, so let's just break down Stephen Miller's argument for 1 second.
You just have a cosmopolitan bias.
Oh, well, of course I do. So now, is it true that a person who comes into the country from China or maybe even Turkey can speak English before they get here? Of course, but that's not what Acosta's saying. What he's saying is you're giving a much bigger advantage proportionally to people whose native language is already English. So British, Irish, Australian, Canadian, etc. Now, of course, there is some percentage of people who come over from China or Africa that already speak English, or Latin America, but it is a lower percentage of their population who would qualify with that standard. And by the way, it would have knocked out Acosta's lineage probably, and probably Stephen Miller's lineage. So when they came over, they spoke Italian or Yiddish, and we didn't say, oh no, that's it, nope, grandma doesn't speak English. How the hell would you have spoken English coming from Sicily, right? And they figured it out because we're America. You get here, you roll up your sleeves and you go to work. And by the way, most of the people coming are coming for work. That's one of the complaints of the conservatives, like, oh, they're coming to take our jobs. So which one is it? Are they bums who have no skills and don't want to assimilate? Or are they working too hard? Make up your mind.
Also, I have to make a quick comment about this whole cosmopolitan bias thing that they keep bringing up over and over again. Okay, we're talking about an administration that's full to the brim of dudes who grew up and spent most of their time in New York. And then Stephen Miller himself grew up in Santa Monica, California. Like, really? I don't see you guys as like rural Americans that are looking out for the little guy.
And why would the rural American understand that they speak better English in China and Saudi Arabia than we think? Why is that a rural position?
It's just
why is it a cosmopolitan position to say that, yeah, countries whose native language is English have a higher proportion of people who speak English? Why is that a cosmopolitan or a rural thing?
Yeah.
No, he just wants to say, oh, you're elitist. You know why he says that? Why he even brings that up? Because it's such a non sequitur. Why even bring it up? He's saying you're insulting the rural people who we're trying to appeal to with this bill.
That's right.
Who don't like foreigners, and you're cosmopolitan, so you don't mind foreigners. And then, so it's actually not Jim Acosta that's bringing race into it. It's Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is basically saying, like, we want to be anti-foreigner, and so you're not letting us make those racial decisions because in your cosmopolitan world, oh, everybody likes one another even though they're different.
I just want them to say it. I just want them to own up to who they are and what they believe, okay? It's not about looking out for Americans and American jobs. You don't care about that. Just say it. We don't like people from different backgrounds. We don't want it. We don't want Latinos, we don't want Asians unless they're really rich and can go ahead and invest $500,000 in Kushner's properties or Trump's properties. But other than that, like, we just don't like them. We don't like them. It's so frustrating because again, they are pandering to Americans who do need help, who do need this economy to improve for them. But they're just exploiting them and using them to push their xenophobic policies that really have nothing to do with the economy whatsoever. All right, we gotta take a break. So
agreed.
Let's do that, and when we come back, Trump reluctantly signing sanctions toward Russia.
Go. Now, you guys are gonna think, especially my early behind the scenes footage, like I already went and looked at the comments in the member section. You guys, oh, he's high, he's drunk. I swear to you, I'm not. Well, I just tell you if I am, right? And so I get goofy in the behind the scenes stuff.
What's the need for the butter with this pretzel? This is already super fattening it up. You don't need to put butter on this thing. Why'd they make me do it, Bitsy? Why'd they make me do it?
Hey, I'm just saying that This is known as the rear end guy. There's no way that every person he knows doesn't call him the rear end guy. I want you guys to see if you could see the lightning bugs. Whoa. Light them up. Light them up.
Is it true, Ritzy? I will now watch it later.
Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat. Imagine him, isn't it? Hey, Kiki Cat. Kiki Cat. All right, this is Kiki Cat signing out.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I forgot my email password. What is it?
PASSWORD.
They'd rather lose to Republicans than have a progressive win with them. That's how dumb the corporate Democrats are.
It's the Democrats who lull you to sleep, and at the end of the day, they're the ones who push the right-wing agenda.
Most of the people are either unemployed, underemployed, or fucked.
This is why you lost to Trump, you fucking moron. What the fuck is wrong with you? Whoever wrote that, I'm sure they were typing with one hand and going like this with you. The Democrats are dead. The way you feel right now, that's how a chump feels. Do not freak out.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Oh, that was interesting. We're back apparently. I expected music. All right, let me read some stuff to you guys. First of all, a couple of quick tweets for you. Rita Ann says, I lost jobs because of free trade, not because of foreign workers. So that's a very interesting point and a good one to bring up. Woke Poppy writes in, of course Americans don't want to do certain jobs like pick tomatoes in heat waves or marry Trump. That's why we need immigrants. Woke Poppy, you're pretty funny, dog.
He's definitely woke.
Yeah.
But are you a poppy?
Okay. All right, bring it down.
I know.
Okay. Poll from yesterday, in the spirit of bipartisanship, should Democrats work with Republicans on tax reform? 90% say no, we should not do the spirit of bipartisanship, and ain't nothing as such thing as a tax reform, it's tax cuts, and only 10% said yes. So that poll came in overwhelmingly. We framed the question to be the most beneficial to corporate Democrats and Republicans, and nonetheless, it was 90 to 10, no, hell no.
You did frame the question kind of skewed in favor of what the conservatives would want. But I watched your video, which I thought was excellent. And if anyone watched that video, it doesn't matter how you framed the question.
Well,
so let's keep it real.
But people can think on their own. It's just that we agree. We're us progressives. We know they're bullshit tricks. Okay. Anyways, let me do a couple of quick YouTube super chat comments too. So if you're watching on YouTube, the super chat is the thing that if you contribute a little bit to the Young Turks, it moves your comment to a more prominent position where we can read it. It's a win-win. It helps the show and you get your comments out there. So if you're using that, we appreciate it and we'll read those. We're more likely to read those. Tristan Russello says Nancy Pelosi may have the support of her caucus, but not the voters, and that's absolutely right. And relates to that poll I was telling you about. Okay, Cole Napick says, LOL, this is my third super chat in about the past 30 minutes. It's just nice to be able to thank you personally, Cenk. Keep it up, #2strong. Thank you, Cole. And somebody, Leah, who is our chief of staff here, is having a baby. And somebody got her a 2 Strong t-shirt, but it had the poop emoji for the baby, So it might be too strong in that regard. Anyway, cute stuff. Ben Peck, shoptyt.com for the actual shirt. Ben Peck says, I think I enjoyed Anna's panel even more than her debate at Politicon. Always hear about how conservatives hate people shouting down speakers. They sure didn't seem to mind doing that to her yesterday.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Drums. Okay, all right, what's next, Anna?
All right. After nearly a week, Donald Trump has finally signed sanctions against Russia. And those sanctions also include countries like North Korea and Iran. But some were speculating that since Russia was included in the sanctions, Trump has been a little bitter about it. And keep in mind that Congress went out of its way to vote in such large numbers in favor of these sanctions that Trump won't be able to veto it. So Trump signed the bill after it passed Congress last week and landed on his desk on Friday. The White House later released a statement announcing that Trump signed the bill, though the president remained sharply critical of it. In fact, he said the following in regard to this bill. My administration particularly expects the Congress to refrain from using this flawed bill to hinder our important work with European allies to resolve the conflict in Ukraine, and from using it to hinder our efforts to address any unintended consequences it may have for American businesses, our friends, or our allies. Now, just to give you an idea of the vote, the House did pass these sanctions with a 419-3 vote on Tuesday, and then the Senate passed it with a 98-2 vote on Thursday, setting up a majority that could override a presidential veto.
So basically, he didn't have a choice. Yeah. Even if he vetoed the bill, he just would have been embarrassed. They would have repassed it in overwhelming majorities, and then he would have gotten the downside of people saying, "We knew it. You want to work with the Russians," and the bill would have passed anyway. So this way, he says, "No, I'm fine. I'll sign it."
Yeah.
He didn't have a choice, but he adds a signing statement saying, "But I reserve the right to not follow it." So this is why it's important to be consistent on policy issues, guys, and ideology. So I hated when Bush did the signing statements, and when Obama did them, I said it's a terrible idea. Don't continue that precedent, because it's basically the president going, the law that Congress just passed and I signed is like your opinion, man.
Right.
I might or might not follow it. And so now that Obama left that door open, Trump's like, thank you very much. I'll walk right through that door and say about this bill, yeah, since I don't have a choice, I'm gonna sign it, but I hate it, and I'm not necessarily gonna follow it. Great.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, just to add on to the fact that he hates it so much, usually when he signs anything into law, he has these big events, right? What is it called? The signing ceremony. Yeah, signing ceremony. He's like, yeah.
Oh yeah, he signs it and then he shows it literally like that.
I signed this terrible bill. Everybody look, take pictures of me. Okay, he didn't do that in this case.
Huh,
okay,
interesting.
Rex Tillerson is also pretty salty about all this. Let's hear from him.
Do you still believe that the passage, the overwhelming votes in Congress to pass that, was a sign that the American people want Russia to take steps to improve the relationship?
I think the American people want the two most powerful nuclear nations in the world to have a better relationship. I don't think the American people want us to have a bad relationship with a huge nuclear power. But I think they are frustrated. And I told President Putin when I saw him in the Kremlin in March, and I've told Foreign Minister Lavrov repeatedly, the situation's bad, but believe me, it can get worse. And it just did. The action by the Congress to put these sanctions in place in the way they did, neither the president nor I are very happy about that. We were clear that we didn't think it was going to be helpful to our efforts, but that's the decision they made. They made it in a very overwhelming way.
Okay, so let's be clear about a bunch of things here. Number one, Rex Tillerson's telling you right there, we didn't want to sign it. We had no choice but to sign it. So later when he claims, oh, well, I signed the sanctions bill, trying to take credit for it, remember this moment where they hated it and told us they hated it. And they lobbied against it for the entirety of the time, and in usual Trump style, completely ineffectual, 98-2. How's your lobbying coming along? So now, when it is that bipartisan, it seems fairly clear what America's representatives want. So, but nonetheless, Tillerson now a politician, so he's like, no, I'll make up what the American people want. They want the same thing I do. Really, why? They didn't vote that way, right? And he's like, well, no, they want us to have a great relationship and lift those sanctions so ExxonMobil can make that deal. Really, is there polling on that by the American people, or did you just make that up? And most important of all, this guy's got a dog in the fight.
Yes.
He was the CEO of ExxonMobil. The #1 deal affected by the sanctions is a $500 billion deal with ExxonMobil that Russia had. So the whole point of Tillerson coming in was to lift those sanctions. And if you don't know the background on it, it is amazing. Tillerson got a medal from Putin. He got a medal from Putin. And the guy who owns the largest oil company in Russia, one of the oligarchs, said that the sanctions were placed on him as well. He can't come back in the US. He's like, I don't like the sanctions because of the economic stuff, but I also want to go back to the US so I could ride motorcycles up and down the highways with my best friend, Rex Tillerson. Okay, the head of the Russian oil company said that about Tillerson. Okay, so yeah, of course, Tillerson and Trump don't want to do the sanctions because they wanted to lift it because Trump owes the Russians and Tillerson, why the hell did he give up being CEO to do some random Secretary of State thing he has no interest in? To lift the goddamn sanctions.
That's right.
That's why they're so mad right now.
But who cares about all these conflicts of interest, right? Why do the Democrats keep harping? By the way, Democrats aren't even really harping on it. We're harping on it. It's a problem because it means that they're going to focus on policies that benefit themselves and their corporate buddies as opposed to policies that actually benefit the American people. Anyway, there's another example of Tillerson doing so. So I want to turn to that. Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, for some reason is refusing $60 million that has been allocated to help mitigate the propaganda by Russians that is coming here to the United States. It's really, really strange. So let me give you the details on what's going on right now. So the Secretary of State is resisting the pleas of State Department officials to spend, I apologize, actually $80 million allocated by Congress for fighting terrorist propaganda and Russian disinformation. So the terrorist propaganda that they want to fight is actually ISIS messaging that's seeping into America right now. They're using social media in order to recruit individuals. It's a big problem. The Trump administration has been fear-mongering about that for quite some time now. So why is it that $80 million has been allocated to help fight that, and Rex Tillerson hasn't taken them up on that offer, hasn't used it, isn't really doing much about it at all. So the Global Engagement Center is responsible for coordinating government-wide efforts to counter the online messages of terrorist groups such as the Islamic State. So this is the organization that has the money, and they keep trying to contact Tillerson and urge him to use it for what it's allocated for. Now, more than 5 months into his tenure, Tillerson has not issued a simple request for the money earmarked for the State Department's Global Engagement Center, 60 million of which is now parked at the Pentagon. Another 19.8 million sits untouched at the State Department as Tillerson's aides reject calls from career diplomats and members of Congress to put the money to work against America's adversaries. Again, Russia being one of them. So he's just like, no, I mean, whatever. I'm just, but yeah, I'm concerned about ISIS and Russian disinformation. I guess I'll get to it at some point.
Yeah, so as usual, the press is going out of their way to present different possibilities as to why this might be happening. So they're like, well, maybe he's just disorganized. Wait, he was brought in because he's a CEO of a successful company, and the whole point of that is to be able to manage well. This is not like, oh golly gee, I couldn't manage well, so the one thing I couldn't approve was something that would work against the Russians, the ones who gave me a medal and that I had a $500 billion deal with right before I became Secretary of State. Now, and look, if you're a progressive and you're worried about, or a conservative, the Global Engagement Center, and they're trying to counter the propaganda that ISIS and Russia is doing. But you could say, hey, we shouldn't be doing propaganda as well. And what if they turn that in against, inside the US, et cetera? Those are legit concerns, right? But if we are going to counter information from anybody in the world, I would imagine it would be ISIS. And given what Russia did in these elections, even if you don't think it's illegal, they certainly did a propaganda campaign and a misinformation campaign inside the US. No one, including all of Trump's intelligence agencies, disagrees with that. And so whether you think that's actionable against Trump is a different question, but Russia definitely did it. And so that would be the top two targets of counterattacks for the disinformation that's going on across the world. And so if you don't authorize that, you must have a different reason.
And by the way, they're not even good at hiding what that real reason is. In fact, let's hear from Tillerson aide R.C. Hammond. He suggested, this is an aide for Tillerson, okay? This is not some progressive or some liberal who hates the Trump administration. This is Tillerson's aide, He says, the money is unwelcome because any extra funding for programs to counter Russian media influence would anger Moscow, according to a former senior State Department official who works with, Hammond. So.
Okay, but I mean, you can't get any clearer than that. We wouldn't want to anger Moscow. I mean, they only did a massive misinformation campaign during our election. So golly gee, we wouldn't want to anger them. Why don't you just say you're working for them? You know that there was a story that came out last week saying that Tillerson might want to leave soon. Wait, he just got there. Why would he want to leave soon? And again, the gullible press is like, oh, his aides and people close to him are saying because maybe he's frustrated with Trump and the chaos in the White House. No, his whole point was to get the sanctions lifted. Not only is it a $500 billion deal with Russia that ExxonMobil did, the revenue is potentially up to $9 trillion. $500 billion is just the amount of investment you need to start that deal, okay? So he's like, yeah, I came here for the goddamn $9 trillion. If I'm not getting it, and what happened last week? Why did they put out that statement last week of all weeks on Tillerson? Now, yes, the White House is a mess, but they've been a mess all along. No, last week is when these votes came in with both the House and the Senate overwhelmingly saying, we are not going to lift the sanctions and we're not going to let Trump lift the sanctions under any circumstances. Then all of a sudden Tillerson's like, well, I forgot about my lunch appointment. You know, maybe I got better things to do.
No, this is a disaster. And by the way, keep in mind that there are still many leadership roles within the State Department that have gone unfilled because of the incompetence, okay? And the fact that Tillerson had no interest in this job in the first place, right? He doesn't care about being Secretary of State. I mean, he might care about using it to his advantage, right? But it's not really working out for him, thankfully, because Congress is finally stepping up to the plate. But in this case, I mean, you have tens of millions of dollars at your disposal so you could actually fight back against propaganda. Look, you want to look out for your little Russian buddies, that's one thing, right? Which I think is ridiculous and undemocratic. But if you want to really combat ISIS recruiting within this country, then why aren't you using that money? It's very strange. Finally, I just want to state that $60 million, the $60 million that's been allocated toward this effort is set to expire on September 30th. It's unclear what will happen after that. It could be transferred to the State Department by then, or they might be able to save that money for next year. I don't know, it's unclear.
But but it is, it's very unlikely to be able to be used if they don't ask it by September 30th. So if they do ask it by September 30th, it's unclear if they have to spend it by then, okay? But the bottom line is, Tillerson appears to be running out the clock because if they don't ask for it by September 30th, they're almost certainly not going to get it. And so then he can turn around and go, oh, I mismanaged that, I guess, so we can't spend $60 million correcting the misinformation that my friends are putting out there in Russia, because I wouldn't want to anger them, and plus they did get us into office. So
it's just insane.
Brazen.
Yeah, Republicans real strong on national security. Anyway, we got to take one more break. When we come back, some fun political stories.
Fun.
I just shot a clip. It's time sensitive and it needs to be edited right now.
Did anybody call for an editor? Need this in an hour. But you're an editor too.
Fuck you.
Brett has a cat. Yeah. I'm moving away from the controversial stuff we were discussing prior to this going live to talking about pussy. Because it's a pussy cat.
Here's the thing, I think that cats are dumber. Everyone thinks that cats are smarter because they found a way to just like not care about you and have a home and food.
Right.
But cats are stupid. They're like children. Like cats, everything they do, it's like, cat, do you want to take a bath right now?
Yeah.
Because you're fucking gross. And they're like babies and like toddlers. We're like, no, this is how I do it.
Yeah.
I just lick it. And you're like, are you sure that's a good idea? Because I think you might get hair caught in your throat. And the cat's like, no, it's fine.
Ugh.
They're stupid. And then like they're just like babies where it's like I pooped and then it's like, did you want to poop outside? No, I poop here, it's fine because I bury it. Like they're idiots. They're like children. And then dogs are like husbands in sitcoms.
Why?
Where they're just like, listen, when do we eat? And I love you for that. Also, I'm gonna try to have sex with you. If you don't want it right now, just roll up a newspaper and hit me.
That's so true. Although Charlie never tries to hump me, always tries to hump Christian. But you know what?
Are you jealous by that?
No, I'm not jealous. I just think it's interesting because I think Charlie might be a gay dog and I love him no matter what.
All right, well, the Young Turks special election day coverage dropping.
An amazing power panel.
Look at this panel. You want to talk about power?
Like a smart Destiny's Child.
We're all too strong.
We start a revolution. Yes, another one.
Aren't you excited?
Wow.
Some of the best writers in the country are right here on this panel, with the obvious exception of John Irola.
Let's not so quickly discount Harry Potter fan fiction.
We have elected the top Twitter troll in the country.
What ran me away from Christianity was judgment and condemnation.
Assaulting peaceful protesters in North Dakota, crazier than bombing Yemen, crazier than bombing Syria so much they ran out of bombs.
What infuriates me is being around the country and seeing misery, corruption, and injustice everywhere.
This reductive interpretation of what their motives are, what Putin's are, by these amateur experts is just beyond.
We don't kill our journalists, and they do.
Back on the Young Turks, Matt Diedrich writes in, I wonder how pissed off Tillerson is at Trump for being a moron. Probably a lot, right? Because presumably Tillerson's way brighter than Donald Trump, and he figures there probably would have been a way to handle this mess a little bit better, so we could have actually gotten the sanctions lifted, and we all could have gotten rich like we planned, you idiot. But Trump's like, oh, believe me, I'm handling it. Hey, dude, it was like 493-2 or whatever it was in this House. He's like, oh, I'm on it. I'm on it. Okay, believe me, it's gonna work great. Anyway, Andrew Schmidt and Susan Martin are our members of the day, tytnetwork.com/join. Today, we have a wonderful old school. Malcolm's here, Brett's here. Ben might or might not come in, but it's gonna be a great old school that I'm looking forward to. Aggressive Progressive tomorrow. Members get all the shows ad-free. tytnetwork.com/join. Okay, Casper, what's next?
All right. Oftentimes when it comes to dictators, they will talk about how everyone loves them, how they usually score perfectly in sports and bowling, and how they're just loved by everyone. Well, it's scary when you think about the fact that Trump thinks of himself in the same way. And I have two examples to point to just to prove my point. So recently, Donald Trump claimed that he got a little bit of, I guess, a compliment when it came to his immigration policies from the president of Mexico. Here's what he claimed, okay? He said, as you know, the border was a tremendous problem and they're close to 80% stoppage. And even the president of Mexico called me. They said their border, their southern border, very few people are coming because they know they're not going to get through our border, which is the ultimate compliment. So Trump made that statement. Okay, so did President Nieto call him and maybe they're friends now? No. The Mexican Foreign Ministry released a statement saying that Nieto has not recently spoken to President Donald Trump over the telephone. So the Trump administration was asked about this, what's going on? Seems like there's a little bit of a discrepancy here, and they responded by saying, yeah, okay, so we can see that he didn't call the president, but-
He didn't call him, but I mean, can you rule out telepathic powers? Of course not, right? I mean, it could be. Maybe they spoke in a previous life.
Yeah, so Huckabee Sanders said that they had an in-person conversation in Germany during the G20 summit.
No, they didn't. Okay, so he's a pathological liar. He can't help himself. That's what I mean by pathological. He must lie at all times. So now my guess, and I know some folks like this, no one to the extreme that Donald Trump is, but people who lie when they don't need to, right? And what they'll do is they'll conflate things. So he probably had a conversation with Nieto back when he met with him long time ago, right? Maybe even during the campaign. And Nieto at some point probably talked about their southern border in a way to empathize with Trump and say, hey, look, we also have a problem on our southern border, and probably talked about the economy and how that's being affected, et cetera. Trump's like, got it. And then, so when they asked him about it, he's like, well, our border is doing so great. That's why because Mexico actually is tougher on their southern border. And a lot of conservatives point to that as a hypocrisy on Mexico's part. That's an interesting point. So he probably bragged about that. And so Trump was like, you see that? Their southern border's fine now because of me, and he told me how great I am. None of the rest of that happened, right? And he still can't get it through his head that back when he was not president, nobody double checked the lies that he put out there nonstop.
No one cares.
You remember when he would pretend to be his own PR person and call in to like page 6 of the New York Post? He's such a petty child. Anyway, he'd be like, oh, I just heard from sources that Madonna didn't turn down Donald Trump. Donald Trump turned down Madonna. Wait, aren't you Donald Trump? No, I'm Jason Barron or whatever, right? So he's been doing this shtick for a long time. He's such a goofball.
All right, so there's one example, and you might think, whatever, not a big deal. Okay, well, there's another example. It all happened in the same week. So as you all know, Donald Trump gave that speech to the Boy Scouts Jamboree event, and it was more like a rally. It became very political, very divisive rhetoric coming from him, and a lot of people were upset. And as a result, the Boy Scouts eventually, finally released a statement apologizing for that speech and saying that they regret that it became so political. Well, Donald Trump doesn't see it that way. During an interview, he said, as evidence of how enthusiastic the Boy Scouts were about his speech, Trump claimed that he, quote, got a call from the head of the Boy Scouts saying it was the greatest speech that was ever made to them, and they were very thankful. Okay.
What a dumbass, man. It's not, you're not calling into Page 6. We can check. We can just call them and ask them if you called. We can look at the White House logs oftentimes, whether it's visitors or phone calls. Everybody's watching you. When are you gonna figure that out? And he's like, oh no, I'll just make stuff up. They'll never figure it out. He's so painfully stupid, let alone liar.
Well, Time Magazine did want to check up on this, and here's what they found. They reported that a representative of the Boy Scouts of America said they're unaware of any call recently made by national leadership to the White House. In fact, 3 days after Trump gave his speech, 3 days after Trump gave his speech, they said they did apologize. That was from Michael Serbaugh, who is the chief scout executive for the Boy Scouts of America. He said that Trump's political rhetoric at the Jamboree was something worth apologizing for. And then he added that he sincerely regrets that politics were inserted into the scouting program.
So not only did they not say it was the greatest speech ever, they actually apologized to the Boy Scouts who heard it because Trump did something wrong and injected political rhetoric into a speech that shouldn't have had any politics into it. But look, you know it, even if you're MAGA, you know that as soon as he said, oh, they called me and told me that it was the greatest speech they'd ever heard, you know that they didn't say that. I don't care what you claim, you know that somebody didn't call and say, oh my God, President Trump, that rambling, weird speech that you gave, even if MAGA dudes liked it, was like filled to the rim with political rhetoric to 11 and 17-year-olds. Greatest speech ever. By the way, this is an interesting phone.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay.
All right. So
clown, liar, buffoon.
Sad.
Baby.
All right. One final story before we go to our break. Donald Trump complains about fake news quite a bit. And so as a result, he has decided to roll out his own version of fake news on social media. So since he likes to employ his family members, he has decided to hire Laura Trump, who's Eric Trump's wife, to do a propaganda show on Facebook.
Oh, great.
And so the first video was recently released, and it is awesome. Let's show it to you.
I bet you haven't heard about all the accomplishments the president had this week because there's so much fake news out there. We wanted to give you a glimpse into his week. First up this week, let's talk about the president's salary. Again, the president has donated his salary. His second quarter salary has now been donated to the Department of Education. Again, this is a president who is putting America before himself. I'm so proud of that. Jobs, jobs, jobs. The unemployment rate is at the lowest point it has been since 2001. That is quite an incredible fact. Again, we saw the Dow hit an all-time high this week. The stock market is up. The economy is booming, ladies and gentlemen. And speaking of jobs, Foxconn is a company who has promised up to 13,000 new manufacturing jobs in Wisconsin. The president also met with some incredible veterans this week in Ohio, giving his thanks to them for their service to our country. Also this week, the president got to meet with ICE and NYPD officers to talk about cracking down on MS-13 gangs. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Laura Trump, and that is The Real News.
It's missing a little something that the Trump folks had when they were doing it during the primaries.
Sarabies!
Yeah, that was definitely a little more fun.
If you had a guy in the background yelling "Sarabies," that would have made the show infinitely better.
Yeah, you know, there were a few things that she missed. So, all right, I don't even know if it's been verified that Trump has donated his second quarter salary to the education department. But she missed like one little caveat to that, which is the fact that Trump's budget proposal includes a $9.2 billion cut to the department. Oh, that's weird. Is that fake news? Because it came from Trump.
Okay, so let's grant her that it's correct, okay? And it's a marketing ploy and a good one that Trump is giving away his salary. So that's $100,000 in that quarter. That goes $100,000 into the Department of Education, 9.2 billion, not million, billion out of the Education Department. And you're bragging about what you're doing for the Education Department. So and the whole premise is, look, by the way, I'm about to defend it in a second too, so that's fun. But the whole premise is preposterous. Now, you all saw that fake news out there. No, wait a minute. He did fire Reince Priebus. That's not fake that he fired him. He no longer works there. Anthony Scaramucci admits that he said all those things to Ryan Lizza about all the different genitalia that people are filleting throughout the White House, okay? And then Scaramucci was fired. Like, we didn't do that. You guys did that, and there's nothing fake about it. And so their constant reference to the facts as fake news, again, I know, like, you gotta be a special breed of MAGA to be like, I know that isn't true, but I don't care. Like, I don't.
Oh, they exist.
I don't care about the truth. I don't care about facts.
Yeah.
They're not remotely interesting to me. If I see facts, I'll call them fake news because I like propaganda, okay? All right, then fine, you're in that category. But all those things did happen in the real world. Okay, now, the part that I'm gonna defend them on is, I don't mind them putting out their own version of stuff and making their own case. I actually, to be honest, think Obama should have done it more. So like, now they're factually challenged here on the Department of Education on the unemployment numbers and the economy is booming. Why do you think that is? You think, was it not booming and Trump came into office and he turned it around right away and you can show me the different programs he used to turn it around? No, it was already booming when he came in. For example, when Obama came into office, we were losing 800,000 jobs a month because Bush had destroyed our economy. I'm told supply side economics works. Anyway, it didn't seem to work when it pulverized jobs in America.
Right.
Obama turned that around and started adding jobs at a very significant pace. Now, I don't think, look, I got issues with that and I think that all the jobs don't pay enough. But if you're looking at unemployment numbers, Obama did a great job on that. Handed it off to Trump. What has Trump done? Almost nothing about that. So now he says all the things I got handed by Obama that I want to excuse for. Oh, I haven't figured out what to do with North Korea. Oh, that was Obama. I can't believe Obama left that mess behind. Right, Iraq, Afghanistan, Obama. The economy, no, he didn't leave that. He didn't leave that, that was me, right? Now, so he's not right about that. But Obama didn't do something like this. He wasn't aggressive at all. So his success with the unemployment numbers and the economy, et cetera, he would whisper it. Whisper. Now, I don't think he should have put Malai out there or some other Obama out there. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, to do this kind of stuff and to do it in kind of an amateur hacky way. But I wish Obama had, for the progressive positions he cares about, if he cared about them, had gone on a much more thorough campaign to argue for them, to fight for them. I would have brought in charts, I would have done explanations. I'd do it every single week if I was if I was advising the president, make your case. So in this case, they're trying to make their case. Yes, it's filled with a lot of misinformation and annoying rhetoric, but I don't begrudge the effort overall.
So I don't know what you think about this or what Americans think about this, but if I feel like if I would never want to be president, but if I were ever president, White House press secretary, sit down. Okay, I'll maybe use you once in a while if I'm super busy, but I can't talk to people. But I want to do the press conference. I want to do a press conference every week where I lay out what's going on in the country, right? The fact that we have the president do like the State of the Nation speech every once in a while drives me crazy. No, you should be doing State of the Nation speeches every week. If you want transparency, we should hear from the president. Stop hiring like a freaking gigantic bureaucratic communications department, okay? I don't want to hear from some schmo that worked as a PR agent in the past. I want to hear from you, make your case.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I feel like that would be a better way to handle it. In terms of this like propaganda stuff on social media, Sure. I mean, I think it's much more effective in the form of a press conference that's televised for the American people.
Yeah, funny though, we did note earlier in the show that they decided that they would not fund a campaign to spread, to counter misinformation coming from ISIS and Russia. But they apparently do have the time to do a misinformation campaign that helps them here. So, fighting ISIS, pain in the ass. Russia, we don't want to make them angry. But wait a minute, propaganda, we could do that, right? So, and again, I say propaganda, but look, Obama did I think he used to do the YouTube thing every week. So everybody's, our side calls it information, their side calls it propaganda, and vice versa. Again, so bottom line on this is that I don't mind that they're trying this. I just wish they'd be a little bit more honest about it.
Right.
All right, we got to take a break here. We do have amazing stories coming up for you guys, including now we can manipulate genes.
That story is for tomorrow, sorry.
Oh, okay.
I know. I had a lot on my plate today. That's a complicated story that I'm doing more research on. We will cover it tomorrow.
Okay, but when we come back, affirmative action. So I don't know if you guys remember, I'm conservative on affirmative action. I'll show you what the Trump administration is doing, and I'll tell you whether I agree with it. We'll be back. TYT is partnering with Participant Media to help solve the climate crisis. Wouldn't that be great? Now, look, you got to check out our series, 10 Days of Action, to learn more about what you can do to make a difference. And go see an inconvenient sequel, Truth to Power, in theaters in New York and LA on July 28th and nationwide August 4th. If President Trump won't lead, we should. The American people have to do it. The majority of Americans, civic leaders, mayors, governors, businesses, they're already moving forward to stop climate change. So no single person can stop us. I pledge to join the movement and hashtag #BeInconvenient. Go to inconvenientsequel.com/action to be part of the solution.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I want to do a YouTube live clip, but not live. Go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
There's always these weird cream cheese options. I can never just find the plain. What about salmon? Do I look like a grizzly bear? Here, try this veggie. Where's the plain? Where is it? You're more of a grape drink kind of guy, right? Or try this mouthwash. Where's the plain? Do you like sexual healing? Where is the plane? Where's the plane? Where's the plane? Where is it? Where's the plane? Dude. Anna Rasparian. No, I want the plane. Supervisor! Aren't you the supervisor? Isn't that the whole point of being supervisor? Why do you get to decide my cream cheese options? At what point did you decide there'd be no plain cream cheese? I don't understand. Take it easy, man. No, this is true just like with politics and anything else. If we don't stand up for ourselves, they're just gonna fuck us even harder. You're not gonna believe this. They kicked me out of the kitchen.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you. The unregistered Chicano writes in, the new Trump network is worthy of North Korea state TV. The W-Do writes in, their first episode was the highest rated news show in the history of news, period. I know what you've been hearing, fake news, but now it's time for the real news. They should get Debbie Schlussel to do it.
I know, it'll be great.
Yes. Tesla Ranger writes in, I thought you couldn't get faker than Fox News, but I stand corrected. Indeed. Okay, lots of stories for you guys in a second hour. Let's do it.
All right. It appears that the Justice Department is now targeting universities that implement affirmative action as a way of admitting students into their institutions. Now, this was a report by the Washington Post where they realized that there was an interesting government job listing for lawyers. So the project will be based out of the department's Civil Rights Division, which is now looking for lawyers interested in working on, quote, investigations and possible litigation related to intentional race-based discrimination in college and university admissions. So the official said that the project will not operate out of the Civil Rights Division's Educational Opportunities section, where career justice attorneys oversee cases on universities, but instead in the front office of the division. So they're not going to work with the experts that usually deal with civil rights issues within these institutions. They're going to go ahead and hire outside lawyers to come in and to essentially target universities that implement affirmative action.
So I'm against affirmative action, so we'll have that conversation in a second. But understand why they're hiring those private contractors, because they're like career staffers that work in civil rights are not going to go and, in their opinion, hurt civil rights. So they're like, that's not what we do, and this is not like protecting white civil rights when whites have enormous power in this country is not a civil rights issue. It's like saying, I'll use Turkey as an example. If you want to protect Kurdish civil rights, that makes sense because Kurds are a minority in Turkey. Saying you're going to protect Turkish civil rights against the Kurds makes no sense because the Turks are a huge majority and control the government and all levers of power. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's the same situation here. Now, it doesn't mean that every white person is doing great. Of course it doesn't mean that, but it's not like poor white people, they're being oppressed and hence need their civil rights protected. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't agree with the Trump administration on affirmative action, which in some ways, as a result, I do, okay? But I'm just talking about how they're applying civil rights.
Right, exactly. I mean, they're essentially using a civil rights component of the federal government, turning it on its head and using it against minorities, which, I mean, I don't know if Steve Bannon is behind this, but it just, in my opinion, reeks of Steve Bannon. But that's speculation, so I want to be clear about that.
Yeah, and don't worry about it, Steve Bannon, because either way, this fits in exactly with their theme of the last 2 weeks after healthcare proposal died. Base, base, base. We'll do anti-immigration stuff, we'll do anti-trans, anti-gay, and now we'll target minorities on the issue of affirmative action.
And just to be clear, even if Steve Bannon isn't involved in this is coming from the Justice Department, Jeff Sessions.
Yeah.
So I think it's clear we know what the intentions are here. Now, two people familiar with the internal discussions at the Justice Department Civil Rights Division said that the move came after career staffers who specialize in education issues refused to work on the project out of concerns it was contrary to the office's long-running approach to civil rights and education opportunities. As a result, political leadership within the department decided to run the effort themselves, thus looking for outside lawyers to come in and fight this. Now, there are other individuals who are studying this particular attempt to target these colleges, and they're saying, look, this is really a way of intimidating these universities and scaring them. And so I'm uncertain how far they're planning on really going when it comes to this. But what I do know is that, there seems to be like a complete misunderstanding of what affirmative action does. I think that there are people who think college admissions, people who work in college admissions will see a black student and they'll be like, oh, I mean, you're failing at everything, but since you're black, we're gonna go ahead and admit you over the white student. That's not how it works. Someone's race or cultural heritage is one of many factors that play a role in their decisions in terms of who they admit and who they don't. And one of the things that colleges try to do, if these colleges decide to implement affirmative action, is create an environment that is diverse, that's representative of America. That way, you're not in an institution that is just full of one particular demographic.
So the Supreme Court has ruled that diversity is a legitimate factor to consider among many factors. It cannot be the only factor in admissions. And diversity isn't just to help African Americans or Latinos. It is to help everyone at the college to get a more rich experience from that, from going to college.
So you can be a well-rounded individual, yes.
So now that's the, I wouldn't have done it through the Civil Rights Division. I think that's purposely insulting. And I agree with the Supreme Court that it, of course, could be one of the factors that people look into. Me personally, politically, I think that affirmative action is, at this point, I don't want to say wrong. Wrong is not the correct word. It's now counterproductive. Okay, so it was absolutely necessary at a time when there was no way for African Americans to break into the roles that were handed down through the generations through families, whether it was legacy admissions in colleges or a lot of blue collar jobs where you'd get your son a job as a longshoreman if you were a longshoreman, et cetera. So that's why affirmative action was needed at one point. But now it robs legitimacy of minorities for all their achievements. So every time someone achieves who's a minority, they go, must have been affirmative action. Yes, they totally misunderstand what affirmative action is, but I think that I'm worried that that's toxic.
Well, okay, so let me respond to that, okay? With a quote that I think is brilliant, but doesn't get enough credit. Haters are gonna hate. Right, and so the people who are gonna whine and complain about that and criticize minorities who are actually succeeding in life are gonna whine and complain anyway. So if we live our lives worried about the critics and what they're gonna say, well then we're not gonna get anything done, right? And so I want to be clear about one thing. Look, I would be more in favor of doing away with affirmative action if people in America were actually on a level playing field. So let's start with grade school. A lot of public school districts throughout the country are funded primarily through property taxes. We live in segregated neighborhoods. Minorities are more likely to live in a lower socioeconomic status and live in poorer neighborhoods that underfund these schools. And so they don't start off at a level playing field, okay? So if things were equal, then I'd say, all right, look, we live in a magical world of equality now. And so as a result, we all have a fair shot and affirmative action is no longer needed. But I don't think we live in that world. I don't think we're even close.
Okay, now I don't want to make the mistake Ann Coulter didn't try to debate you, but let me introduce two important caveats that need to be part of the conversation. So when I say affirmative action, I mean based on race. I would do affirmative action based on socioeconomic conditions.
Okay.
Because if you're a poor kid in Logan, West Virginia, and you're white, but man, it is you don't have books to take home. You're packed inside the schools, and you don't have so much of the resources that a rich family in Beverly Hills might have or Manhattan. Okay, and you still got good grades and you still got great SAT scores. Well, that shows me I'm not doing affirmative action because I want to tilt the scales in your favor. I'm doing affirmative action to realize how amazing a job you did in the context that you were born into. So whether they're white or they're black or Latino, I don't care. But I do care that if you've overcome tough socioeconomic positions, I think they should look at that. They'd be crazy not to look at that.
I absolutely agree with you. And final point that I want to make, legacy admissions. Yeah, how about we talk about that, okay? Oh, so your daddy went to this university? I don't give a fuck, okay? That shouldn't be a reason why you get, white people never talk about that. right?
Yes.
You never hear them complain about that. To me, that's a bigger issue than affirmative action, right? Just because Papa went to this university doesn't mean that you get an easier opportunity getting into this school.
Okay, let me tell you about how bad legacy admissions are. That was going to be my second caveat. So at first, I used to think legacy admissions were a small percentage of the admissions. It turns out that's not true. I have friends who work in college admissions now, and it is huge. So for example, I want my kids to go to the schools that I went to, but that's not fair that they get to have an advantage in applying to those schools because they happen to randomly be my kids as opposed to some poor kid in the middle of Kansas working his ass off, and he should get an equal shot. He should, and again, you should reward how well he did given his situation. And you want to know why colleges care so much about legacy admissions? This is amazing. It turns out the #1 indicator of whether you'll donate to a school is if 2 generations of your family went to that school.
That's right.
Because it's all about the money, Lebowski. So that's why, but yet in these conversations about affirmative action, legacy admissions never come up, and that's grossly unfair. And that's not based on someone has a disadvantage or not a disadvantage. That's if you have an advantage, they give you a bigger advantage. So it is. So be intellectually honest about this, and then we can have a legitimate conversation that I'm hoping we have on the issue of affirmative action.
Agreed. All right, let's go to the next story. There's a video going viral online featuring a woman who hurled racist insults at employees and customers at a Target. Now, the video has some profanity, it's very vulgar, but I do want you guys to take a look at it and then we'll come back and give you some deets.
Riot! You fucking sand nigger fucking pieces of shit, fuck all of you! My son! Fuck you, you sand nigger bitches! You are shit! All of you are shit! When you die, you won't even have a fucking ghost! I don't speak English, Get off of me! No! Drink it now! I'll leave! I'll leave if you let go! I'll leave if you let go! Help! 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 I'll leave if you let go! I'll leave if you let go!
All right, so as of now, this video, the person who posted the video isn't responding to people who are tweeting to him or her. And so we don't know exactly where it took place. All we know is this video exists and this incident happened. Look, I feel like these videos are now a dime a dozen where someone goes on a crazy rant that's racist or xenophobic and they get criticism for it. But what I wanna comment on more than anything is the fact that that security guard is amazing. Because here's the thing, whenever I go to a Target or any department store where they have a security guard, I'm like, what's this kid gonna do, right? Usually they don't have weapons or lethal weapons.
Thanks God.
Yes, and look at what he did. I mean, that woman was like losing her mind and honestly very violent and threatening. And he managed to restrain her on his own without using any weapons. I don't know who that man is, but I want to give him a ton of love and a ton of credit.
Yeah, I guess I've become too much of a lib because watching those arrests are always super uncomfortable. In this case, not an arrest, he's detaining her until the police come. And she's doing property damage, but at the same time, like when she started screaming, I thought, she didn't break too many things, just let her go.
What?
Yeah.
No, she's throwing things at customers and employees at this Target. No, don't let her go. You're nuts.
Okay.
I think look, in terms of my lib side coming out, I think that she doesn't seem like she's mentally sound, and so she might have a condition, and I don't want to. I don't know. I don't know anything about her.
Or she's high.
Exactly.
Like she's not in good shape, So that's why I'm saying I'm living out on this. Like she got enough problems, and I know that she's saying terrible things, but and that leads to my second point, which is that oftentimes the people saying and doing terrible things are in real bad shape, and they're looking for someone, anyone, to be below them, whether that's rational or not rational. Of course, it's not true, but they're desperately trying to find someone that's doing worse than them so they can feel better about themselves. And when they can't find anyone, what do? They go, well, someone else must be worse than me by their very nature, right? Not based on actions, but these, I don't know, were they Arabic? I don't know why she was calling them sand, whatever.
The employees or the customers.
Who knows what she was thinking, right? But they, by definition, must be worse than me, and I'm in terrible shape.
Yeah.
So as I look at her, and nobody really got hurt. I don't know. I might have just been like, just don't come back.
You can't throw things at people. And look, I just want to find out who that security guard is, and I want him to get hired as a cop. He's awesome. So,
okay.
Anyway, all right, one more story before we go to break. An anti-immigrant group in Norway left some pretty interesting comments on a photo that featured what appeared to be women sitting at a bus, okay? So this anti-immigrant group on Facebook is known as Fatherland First.
And that sounds great.
And they're known to be anti-immigrant. And look, they've had an increase of immigrants coming into their country, refugees coming into their country as a result of some of the unsettling things happening in the Middle East. So of course, naturally, you're gonna have some people who are not happy about that. These individuals represent that group. Now, someone decided to play a little bit of a prank and posted this picture onto the Facebook page. And if you just quickly glance at it, I think maybe you might be able to see a group of women sitting on a bus wearing burqas. I think if you look a half a second longer, you can just see that there's seats, right?
Oh, I just figured out there were seats. I thought they had put dummies in place.
No, they're just empty seats. And so someone who has access to the group decided to post the picture and said that, what do people think of this, And the response was expected, okay?
Of course.
One person writes, it looks really scary, should be banned. By the way, Norway is considering legislation that would ban headdresses like the burqa or niqab. You can never know who's under there, could be terrorists with weapons.
Well, now to be fair, it doesn't look like anybody's sitting in those empty seats, but that's why they could be ghosts. And ghosts could be friendly like you, the friendly host Casper.
Am I friendly though?
Okay, or it could be a malicious ghost, it could be a terrorist ghost.
You never know, you never know. So yeah, this prankster basically said, I laid out the photo to see what happened. He got the kind of response that he expected, and he said, I ended up having a good laugh.
So guys, here's the situation. I don't like burqas, but that's like my opinion, man. And when I see a woman in a burqa, I wish that she would get liberated, and that's. And I want to help free her. But I don't want to do that by hating her. You see how ironic that is? I want to do that by trying to get our message out more that there's honestly a culture that works better for women and for everyone involved. That being free is the better way to go. Now, I make that case against all the religions. So for evangelicals here in America, all the things, you can't do this and you can't do that, and there's people that are against porn. Just no, you do whatever you want, leave us alone. And by the way, if you're not watching porn, I'd like to liberate you too, okay? And you're needlessly oppressing yourselves with these ancient, ridiculous cultures that are way outdated. Now, but turning your fury against them makes no sense, right?
Yeah.
So, I
think turning your fury against them is it's basically a symptom of a common problem that I'm seeing, not just in Norway. So I'm not trying to criticize Norway. We have this problem in the US too, where people react to things that they find unusual or scary without just stopping to think about it for a second. So for instance, this photo, right? If people wanted to react to it right away, like, oh, it looks scary. But just take a second to really process it. Take a second to really think about it. I think that's what I want to say. So look, I get it, okay? I totally understand that if you are living in a country where seeing women wearing burqas is unusual, it's gonna be super unsettling to all of a sudden notice that there are women wearing burqas all around you. You're not used to it. And so I don't wanna I don't want to be too harsh against them because I think any normal human being would feel the same way, but just give yourself a second to really process it and think about why it is you feel that way and why do you feel threatened and is that person really a threat? And even outside of issues pertaining to refugees and Muslims. Look, I'm guilty of this too. Sometimes I react too quickly. Sometimes I need to stop and really think about it before I have a response or a reaction. And that's okay. It's okay if you hesitate and you think about it before reacting.
Yeah, and this prank is great because it does give you kind of a Rorschach test into your perceptions.
Right.
So people who don't see any problems saw empty seats. People who are afraid of Muslims saw burqas, and I saw dummies because I got triggered by the word right wing, and I thought it must be dummies. Okay, all right. No, in all seriousness, look, it's not just about Muslims. Like for Muslims, I want to help them, and one of the great compliments I got at the end of one of the shows, live shows that we did, was a Muslim woman who came up to me and said that we gave her the courage to not follow the traditions that she felt were oppressing her, and she now feels free, and that feels amazing that we got that done. But I feel just as good when people who are evangelical come out and say, "Hey, you know what? I was gay, or I wasn't. I was just like, there's all these rules, and the rules don't make any sense, and I feel free now, right?" And if you're a right-wing evangelical kid out there and you got all this propaganda in your head, no, sex is bad, porn is bad, take a load off. Well, maybe literally, okay? It's okay, but part of liberating people isn't hating them.
Right, exactly. One quick thing that I want to say in regard to women wearing burqas in like Western cultures. So look, I think it's interesting because you usually bring up the point that, hey, it oppresses them and you want to liberate them so they can finally take it off and wear what they really want to wear. But we get pushback when we make that comment from Muslim women who do live in free societies and they want to wear the burqa or the niqab or whatever headdress.
No, they don't.
Okay, but here's the thing. So I thought about it in my own context because a couple of years ago, there was this uber progressive guy who started getting on me because I like to wear heels. And he was just like, you totally bought into the patriarchy. Why are you wearing high heels? You shouldn't be wearing high heels. You're torturing yourself just so you can, appease the patriarchy, this and that. And I'm like, no, I actually really like wearing heels. Like, you guys never see my shoes. I have no reason to wear heels, but I wear heels often at work because they make me feel powerful. They make me feel, taller, they make me stand straighter, and I just like it. I like wearing feminine clothes. It makes me feel nice and beautiful, whatever it is. And so it was super insulting to me to have that guy tell me that I've been brainwashed by the patriarchy when in reality I'm doing something that I genuinely enjoy and it makes me feel good. And so I think there might be Muslim women out there that feel that way about the way they dress. And I don't know, it's just it's an uncomfortable issue because you don't know what they're thinking or what they're feeling.
Okay, so when you said you guys don't see my shoes, 28% of the male audience went, why not? Okay, anyway, I want to talk more about this in a post game.
Okay.
Because I kind of disagree with what you just said. And I think it's a really interesting conversation, but a longer conversation. So let's do that in the post game, tytnetwork.com/join, and we'll take it up there, okay? Because I think that people get brainwashed into doing the things that they do, and they genuinely think they want to do it, but what does that mean? Is it actually genuine? That's the conversation we'll have in the postgame after the show. Okay, so let's take a quick break. Before we do, sorry, one more thing. On the first affirmative action story, I really wanted to add something, so I'm just gonna go back to that for a second, okay? And finally, on affirmative action, I want you to know what the real effects are. So California ended affirmative action. So the jury's in. They ended it in the mid-1990s. And so minority enrollment did go down for African Americans and Latinos. As an example, at UCLA, Hispanic enrollment had peaked at 16.1% in 1995 and went down to 12.5% by just 2000. So they lost 4% there, but in that of 16%, that's obviously a significant percentage. But you wanna know the most interesting part? The thing that went down the most was white enrollment. It went, for example, at the University of California, San Diego, In 1990, white enrollment was 57%. By 2005, it had dropped to 33%, from 57 to 33. You want to know why? If the whites, blacks, and Latinos dropped, well, who's taking all the positions? Asians. So it is true that affirmative action discriminates against Asians. It does. But the number one benefactor, especially in raw numbers, from affirmative action is white Americans. So I don't know if that's why the Supreme Court turned around and was like, you know what, affirmative action, not so bad, because earlier they'd ruled against it. Maybe they saw these numbers and they're like, wait. Yeah. Let's bring back affirmative action, because apparently white folks really need it. So if you're all I'm saying is be careful what you wish for. All right, we'll be right back.
What date are we recording this?
Oh my God, it's 4:20. We'll be right back.
Please stand by.
A few minutes later.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I'm reading some of the comments on a YouTube video I did. What's a cuck? Go.
I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Hassan D. Piker and on Twitter at Hassan the Hun. And this has been The Breakdown. Was that good, guys?
Okay. Not enough hashtag use. Hashtag abs, hashtag model, hashtag woke bay.
Hashtag one black friend.
I'm thinking more rings.
I got him here.
You need more accessories. Way more accessories.
I don't know where to put it.
Come on, throw these on. Woke bay, not sleep bay.
More sexy too.
When's the last time you posted on Instagram? Too long. Come on, man. No, you need to post at least once an hour. What's the outfit of the day today? Is this what you're going with? No. We need more accessories. We need.
This doesn't have anything to do. It doesn't.
For your gay audience, man.
Yeah, the gays love you, man.
Okay. What else? What else do I need to do?
You haven't appropriated a culture in a week.
We have like a kimono or something.
Damn, that looks good on you, dude.
Perfect. How many rings you got on? Do we have any more?
I got 3 more.
Yeah, can we get more rings on this?
And when you're done, kiss the ring. Look at the camera. Kiss the ring. Maybe like a little wink.
Islam's role in terrorism and all the Huffington Post articles weren't doing well. I wasn't.
How many likes did our last outfit of the day picture have?
Only like 100,000.
So I think that's where your focus needs to be. I hear you on all the blah, blah, blah social issue. We need to focus on followers.
Kids in Yemen.
We don't care if you sleep at night.
Dab, dab.
Okay, I'll dab.
There you go.
More.
Talk about yourself more.
Yeah. I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, be more into it.
Instagram is important for me. Americans losing access to healthcare coverage.
I hear you. Attack Tommy more.
I've done it so many. She shoots out of her living room now. It's like punching down now.
We're okay with that. But it helps the brand.
We made you. We got you verified.
You're nothing
like,
without us.
So I don't know what else I need to do here.
Dude, just take off that shirt.
That's exactly why Tommy Lauren is stupid. I hate you. I'm Hassan Piker. Follow me on Instagram.
Hashtag woke bay.
Hashtag woke bay. Please follow me. Please.
right, back on the Young Turks. Plenty of people disagreeing with me on Twitter. So what's new in America? Billy Runaway says, strenuously disagree with Cenk. Anna is right in this case.
Which one?
I believe it's affirmative action that he's referring to. Wrong. No. Okay. Leanne writes in, hey Cenk, no one in retail gets paid enough to have to put up with that kind of abuse. Let her go. Are you kidding? So
that was a weird
yeah,
pardon from you.
It is, no, because she's not a person in power. Do you see what I'm saying?
I know, but just because she's not in power doesn't mean that she's not dangerous.
No, and she's in bad times. You got to get her out of there, okay? It's just like that pizza shop that I went to. The woman who was being horribly abusive to the manager, and they got her out of there, and then when the cops started arresting her, she broke down and started crying. And I felt like you had to get her out of there, but she's in bad shape, man.
Yeah.
So extra punishment, anyway, that's my lip side. All right, Elliot writes in, not sure why we should give more leniency to white women for throwing things at employees when autistic black men get shot at. Well, I don't want either, just to be clear. Okay, so, all right, anyways, what did I say? Bad idea to ever debate Anna Kasparian. All right, go ahead.
All right. A family in Tennessee has filed a federal civil lawsuit against a police department after he was arrested, restrained, and then tased several times while he was restrained. The teenager in the center of this lawsuit is 18-year-old Jordan Norris. He was arrested for drug possession, marijuana to be specific, drug paraphernalia, and also having prohibited weapons, although those weapons haven't been disclosed. Now, he had been booked on charges of on these charges, and then apparently while he was in a cell, he had a mental episode and started banging his head against the wall. And so cops who worked there restrained him, and then while he was restrained, they did tase him. Now we have the video of it, and it's really hard to look at. So I want to give you guys a warning ahead of time. But with that said, let's take a look.
So he's obviously restrained. There's no question about that. And Anna, are they claiming they did this because they didn't want him to do stuff after he's restrained? Because otherwise, this is just gratuitous torture.
So this video went on for a long time, and it's really hard to look at. They went on and on and on, and they wouldn't stop. And he's restrained. He doesn't pose a threat. I mean, the whole reason why the taser is available to police enforcement, is so they can subdue someone who is not easily subdued. And in this case, he is literally restrained. And I mean, I gotta be honest, he's lucky that he didn't die, because it went on for a long time, and they're tasing him in his chest. And there have been cases of people who have died because the taser hit their heart. And
yeah, you could definitely have a heart attack. I'm going to read the first graphic here. In the second video, taken from the taser camera and matching the time period shown in the first video, one officer is heard saying, "I'll keep on doing that until I run out of batteries." So look, if someone is having a mental episode, please bring in an expert. A taser is not a psychological expert. You're applying the wrong tool to the job, because it's not that it's not frustrating, that it's hard to control the kid, and he might even hurt himself if he keeps banging his head. That's not the issue. The issue is, how do you deal with that? And you're trying to do it in a way where you think, okay, if I apply enough force, then they will logically stop doing that. Not if they're having a mental episode. Then they're not using logic. If he was using logic, he wouldn't have been banging his head against the wall in the first place. You need a professional to help you with that. And using brute force, A, doesn't help you at all. B, is likely counterproductive, and it's gonna make him wanna rebel more because you're tasing the living crap out of him, right? And C is just gratuitously harmful. It just, since it doesn't get the job done, all it does is just punish this poor kid. And if your reason for going in was, hey, I want to make sure he doesn't get hurt, well, you got a curious way of showing it.
Well, that's not the reason they put him in there. Well, yeah, I mean, he had an episode, and maybe that's the reason why they wanted to restrain him. But it's just, Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is counterproductive. If you genuinely care about his safety, then why are you tasing him? Especially tasing him in a way that could lead to his own death. By the way, his stepfather, William Chapman, said that after the teen was released on bond from jail, he counted more than 40 burns on his body, and they even provided some photos to prove it. Again, graphic, but here's some more evidence that they plan on using in this case. It's just so stupid. It really is.
You know what? Again, it's always comes back, unfortunately, the same thing: training. Okay, because there's two issues wrong with the training here, and not every police department does it that way. We've over and over given credit to the police departments that do bring in mental health experts, and they and the ones that do that lower the rate of violence from cops to citizens tremendously, which is great. That's great news. That's what you should be doing, right? But unfortunately, most of the police departments do not do that, and they apply the only thing they're taught: force, and if force doesn't work, more force, and at the end, lethal force, and sometimes in the beginning, lethal force. Yeah. So luckily, in this case, it wasn't lethal, but it easily could have been. And just because you have a hammer doesn't mean everything's a nail. And unfortunately, a lot of the police training is find a nail and hammer the hell out of it. This was not a hammer situation.
Yeah, and luckily the public defender managed to get that video, that surveillance released. So they obviously have a case, and I'm glad that it was also released to the public so we can please stop pretending like we don't have an issue with policing in the country. All right, final story, it's a light one, sort of, but I'm amused by it.
Go.
Recently, a news organization, publishing company, I don't know, let me start that again. Recently, an article was written about the emergence of anti-vaxxers. Now, anti-vaxxers have been around. They made a lot of headlines in recent years because they believed that vaccines would lead to autism among children. Now, of course, that's been debunked time and time again. However, this new generation of anti-vaxxers are concerned about vaccines for their pets, specifically for their dogs. So according to Brooklyn Paper, a growing number of folks in New York's hippest neighborhoods simply will not take their pets in for routine shots. Some of those shots include rabies shots, which you're supposed to get every year for your pet.
Great.
One person, just to provide an example, one person had tweeted, y'all, a dog owner called the clinic today and asked, could vaccines make their dog autistic like they do with humans? So I guess that's an employee from a clinic. But there was an actual veterinarian who was asked about this. Her name is Amy Ford, and she said, we do see a higher number of clients who don't want to vaccinate their animals. This may be stemming from the anti-vaccine movement, which people are now applying to their pets. She also says it's actually much more common in the hipstery areas. I really don't know what the reasoning is. They just feel that injecting chemicals into their pet is going to cause problems. Now, to be fair, Brooklyn Paper did not interview any of these anti-vaxxers. I'd be really curious to hear from them and what they think. But here's the thing, I have a dog, I love my dog. I just feel like we're not worthy of dogs, okay? They're just so, they're precious, innocent, pure, like loving things, and we're not worthy.
Animals are innocent.
Okay, I hear you, sister.
Take care of your dog. Your dog's not gonna get autism. What's wrong with you?
Okay, so I thought when you said, to be fair, the Brooklyn Paper did not interview, you were gonna end the sentence with, did not interview any of the dogs to see if they were in fact autistic. Okay, I don't know how you would find out if a dog is autistic.
Right.
Okay, you know why? Because they're not humans. I know you think they are, I know she thinks they are, but they're not.
Okay, another vet said, we've never diagnosed autism in a dog. I don't think you could.
How would you know? All right, anyway. This is the two ends of the political spectrum coming together. You know, the uber left and the uber right, they're like, if there's one thing we know, science isn't true. Okay, now guys, to be fair, there is a range of people in the anti-vaccine movement, right? And there's the ones who have totally unsubstantiated views. And then there are the people who are concerned about mercury in some of the vaccines. That's an interesting thought. I don't have an opinion on it, and I'm not like, oh, it's totally true, and oh my God. No, I do all the vaccines and all that stuff, right? But what I was trying to do is find, there was an intelligent person who wanted to make the mercury case on the show, and we were gonna have them debate someone. And no one will debate anyone who's anti-vaccine. It's amazing. We reached out to all the doctors, the scientists, because I'm like, look, I don't wanna just interview the anti-vaccine person, because that might present a skewed view of it, and I'm not an expert,
exactly,
and I can't debunk, so I want to make sure there's someone else to. And they're like, nope, won't do it.
That's really strange.
I know. We asked a ton of people and couldn't find anybody to pick up that mantle. Anyway, so don't necessarily dismiss everyone out of hand. At the same time, look, you need those vaccines not only for humans, but yes, for dogs. If your dog might have rabies, you need to have a vaccine or might get rabies, right? You're not doing your dog any favors by not getting the vaccines, let alone your neighborhood. So if rabies starts to break out in Brooklyn among hipsters, I will be greatly amused. I mean, that's a shame, but we're trying to prevent it. So go get the vaccine that the dogs need if you care about them.
Yeah, and look, maybe there are some people who think that vaccines are harmful for their pets, but I think the bigger issue is they're expensive. Like vaccines for your pets are expensive.
That's why you should have.
Yeah, so I feel like they might be using that as an excuse. Like, oh yeah, it might be really bad.
No, I bet hipsters definitely believe it.
Yeah.
And then we're way overgeneralizing.
I know, but that's all you can really do because they didn't interview any of these so-called hipsters who refuse to vaccinate their dogs, right? I mean, at least we heard from the vets who say, yeah, there's a growing trend, but just please vaccinate your dog.
And if you're a progressive and you're starting to agree with Michelle Bachmann, you might want to check yourself. Right? It can happen. It can happen on some issues. This is probably not the hill you want to die on, or for your pets to die on.
Right.
Because remember,
animals are innocent.
Never gets old.
Okay, all right, guys. We're largely out of time. So in the post game, we're going to pick up the conversation we started about whether women wearing headscarves can actually exercise their free will to wear them. Now, I know a lot of progressives are going to disagree with me, and it is a super interesting conversation, and it's not black and white. There's a lot of gradations there, and it's an interesting conversation. That's why when we want to take more time to discuss an issue like we did with the Russian assassination last night on the post game, which is super interesting, not related to the election, but a fascinating story from 2015. That's why we do the post games. So go to tytnetwork.com/join. If you're a member, you get all the post games, you get the whole 2-hour show, you get it ad free, and you can download it or stream it anytime. Plus, old school, aggressive, progressive, and all the network shows like What the Flick and Murder with Friends. And you help support independent media. Okay, so there's a lot of good reasons to sign up, and thank you for doing that. And like I said, tonight at 11 o'clock Eastern, we'll have a great new episode of Old School that all the members can watch live. All right, so I hope to see you on Old School, and don't forget Jimmy Dore is going to come burn down the house down tomorrow on Aggressive Progressive. You can see the first segment for free, everybody at 9 o'clock Eastern on Thursdays, every Thursday, and then the rest goes for members. So join up, help support us for a good cause. Okay, bye-bye. back on the post game. So here's my take on it. So like I said, it's complicated. Nobody knew that.
Wait, give them, because they might have not seen the video.
No, I know. Don't worry, I'm going to set it up. No one knew that figuring out culture was complicated and what the right culture should be or anything. Yeah. All right, so look, during the regular show, we had a discussion about this story where in Norway they took a picture of empty bus seats, but they looked like women in burqas, at least to the right wing, and they were filled with hate. I said, I'm not pro burqa, and whenever I see someone in a burqa, I want to feel like we should liberate them. Now, not by force and not by hating them, as I explained, but through getting our ideas and culture out. So Anna made the point that, well, look, some people say the patriarchy taught you to wear high heel shoes, so that's why you wear them. And she's like, no, I like them. Now, I'm positive that some people who wear burqas and certainly headscarves, because the less extreme you get, the more optional it is, and more you might be thinking, that's just, I like that, right? That spectrum is important because I don't believe anyone actually likes a burqa, okay? So now, again, they think they like it. Not all of them, some of them, right? And I have no idea what the percentages are, so I'm not gonna make any numbers up, right? So the problem is that we are all brainwashed from an early age to believe certain things. And as I've said many times before, some of that brainwashing is actually a good thing, and some of it is a bad thing. And it's very hard to discern which is which. So we teach our kids to eat with a fork and knife. That's brainwashing them. They don't have to, they could eat with their fingers, they could eat with other things. They could eat with their shoes, scoop it up with your shoe and eat it. Okay, but brainwashing them to eat with forks and knives turns out not bad, not bad. We teach them to eventually wipe their own asses. That turns out to be a genius idea in how you brainwash kids, okay? So almost everything we teach our kids is a form of brainwashing, right? Now brainwashing obviously has a negative connotation, but in this case I'm just talking about how we indoctrinate our kids for the good things and bad things, right? Now, I know that everybody earnestly believes that they believe their religion, but they're wrong. Because almost no one converts. That's, again, of course, plenty of people convert. I'm talking about percentages. So the overwhelming majority of people who are born into Christianity remain Christian, Muslim remain Muslim, etc. Right? So you think you're making a choice to be Muslim or Jewish or Christian or Hindu, but you're not. I mean, what a lucky coincidence that almost all the people on earth happen to get born in the right religion. You know, the Hindus think, boy, I got lucky. I got born into Hinduism and this is the right religion. Everybody thinks that, right? And that is not correct. You didn't get lucky and it's an accident of fate and you genuinely believe that, but it is a mistaken belief. Do you see what I'm saying? So you might think, yeah, maybe the burqa has some advantages. You're not feeling particularly pretty that day. Okay, now I don't want to belittle it. I know I'm just being a little too light there. There's days I could use a burqa. Okay, but overall, of course, it's not a thing that makes you happier to cover your whole face and no one's allowed to look at you. You're not allowed to speak through it. And it takes away so many of your freedoms and your personality and who you are as an individual. I would argue that it is inherently a bad thing. And even if you think you like it, it's because you got brainwashed into it. Now, where it gets a little bit hazier is a headscarf, high-heeled shoes. Yes, you got brainwashed into high-heeled shoes. Yes, you genuinely like it. Is it intrinsically a bad thing? No, not necessarily at all, because it does make you feel powerful. So.
It makes me feel, yes. So, but it's funny because I started wanting to wear high heel shoes when I was like 12, okay? And so, like my parents were like, no, you're not gonna wear high heeled shoes. Are you crazy? You're too young. I think I might have even been younger than that. And my dad was especially against it. He's like, no, it's terrible, it's bad for you, you don't wanna wear it. No, I want high heeled shoes. And I wouldn't let it go. And finally my mom got me a pair of like high heel shoes, okay? They weren't even high heel, little heels. And I've always loved them. I've always loved them. And guess what? Like you mentioned all the negative components of wearing a burqa, well, or a headscarf. But I mean, there's a ton of negative things that come along with wearing high heels. For instance, they're really bad for your feet. And I know they're bad for my feet. I know they're damaging my feet right now.
Yeah.
I still wear them because I love them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's just keep it, I'm gonna.
We're about to keep it real.
Okay, so the whole thing that's kind of spurred this conversation was this argument that I got into with the progressive guy who got mad at me because I like to wear high heels. And he's like, oh, you got brainwashed by the patriarchy. And I kept trying to explain.
I think he said it in that exact voice and hand motion.
Yeah. So I tried to explain it to him. I'm like, no, but like, I don't, like, you need to know me, right? And I'm not the kind of person who does things that I don't want to do, right? In fact, I've gotten a lot of heat for not doing things that were expected of me by my culture, right? Marrying an Armenian guy, being religious, and all of that stuff. Like, I've always pushed back against all that shit. And so I don't think I've been brainwashed. I think that this is what I genuinely want, and the way I dress is what makes me feel powerful. It makes me feel attractive, right? It makes me feel strong. For me, femininity represents strength. So I like looking feminine and feeling feminine. And so to have this guy accuse me of doing something because I've been brainwashed by the patriarchy was so incredibly insulting. And I was pissed. Because he didn't care what I had to say. He didn't care how I felt. He was telling me as a man how I felt and how I've been, oppressed by the patriarchy. And I'm like, homeboy, you are mansplaining to me. So you are part of the problem, right? So you, as a dude, you don't get to tell me what makes me feel good and what makes me feel powerful. And so, look, are there gradations when it comes to the type of headdress? Sure, but again, when I think of that, experience in my life, I just feel uncomfortable telling women, especially women who live in the Western world, who might live in the United States or whatever, Europe, and they're not living in this oppressive dictatorial regime. I feel uncomfortable telling them like, no, this is not really something you choose to do. You've been brainwashed. I think some of them genuinely do like it, and honestly, you mentioned like it takes away so much of their personality. I've gotten emails from Muslim women who say, no, I don't want guys to be hyper-focused on my physical appearance. I feel like I can actually be myself without people being distracted or judging me about the way I look.
I believe that you genuinely think that, and I understand that advantage, and I think your point is well taken. Having said that, if you were born a Lutheran, you never would have made the choice to wear that headscarf. Never, okay? So it is brainwashing. You can argue that it's okay, it's neutral or slightly positive when you weigh the things, and you recognize that and are continuing that tradition nonetheless. That's a super fair argument, right? Basically the argument you're making about high heel shoes. But let's not pretend that you, in Iran, you have to wear a headscarf at a minimum, right? So people wear pink ones, colorful ones, and they'll say, well, that's okay because it's an expression of my personality. That's wonderful, and I'm glad you're doing that, and that gives me a sense of your identity, so that's it, quote unquote, better in my mind, because I at least know more about you and it's more expression you get to express. But again, if you're born in Norway, you would have never worn that pink headscarf. The people who wear headscarves optionally are like Jackie Kennedy. Okay, so like in the old days, people would be like, "Oh, it's sunny. I'll wear a headscarf," right?
Yeah.
And I want to distinguish between harmless and something that is potentially harmful. So in Turkey in the old days, the older women used to wear headscarves, but just headscarves.
Yeah.
And it was tradition, and no one, they were like, they might have been oppressed for other reasons, but they weren't oppressed because of the headscarf. You could see their face, you could see their body. They wore different clothes, they got to express themselves, etc. Right? So that reminds me of the yarmulke. Again, if you weren't born Jewish, it is very unlikely you'd be like, oh, I got a great fashion idea. I'm gonna wear a yarmulke. Okay, you're wearing the yarmulke because you were born into that culture, tradition, etc. Okay, but does the yarmulke really hurt? Not really. It has almost no downside. The headscarf that the old ladies used to wear has almost no downside. Jackie O's headscarf in the sun has almost no downside, right? But the minute you start to obscure yourself and take away your ability to express yourself, I think that the harm that comes from that is significant enough that you should at least reconsider the heritage that you grew up in.
Yeah.
And so, and I talk about reconsidering heritage and culture all the time because, as we've discussed many times, some parts of your culture are great, some parts of your culture are miserable, and that is true of almost all the cultures. So you should make an educated assessment of that rather than just going, this is what we do, this is what we do, and you don't know me, I love it, right? Think about why you love it. And if at the end you still love it, even knowing the upsides and downsides, then God bless, that's perfect.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, fair enough. But if
they solved it.
But if they do that assessment and they decide that they still love it, then you should concede that they love it and not accuse them of being brainwashed, which is what happened with me.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I'm kidding. And again, the word brainwash is too strong and too negative a connotation.
Yeah.
We're all programmed, right? And if you say, yeah, I know, I get it. I got programmed to wear the headscarf and I get the downsides. But for me, I got used to it and I kind of like it. And I think the upsides are slightly higher, so get off my ass. I will, in fact, get off your ass.
Okay.
All right, okay, is that not fair? Is that not merciful?
That's merciful.
Okay. Like, all right, I want these women to be liberated. And if you're not, I'll be on your ass. That's not a good slogan. So anyways, all right, that's all I had.
All right, cool.
All right, much love, guys. I'll see you in 2 hours and 40 minutes on Old School. Okay?
And yeah, and we have a TYT Classics today, not live, but make sure you check it out.
Oh yeah, definitely. Check out TYT Classics. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.